Hey monkeys, how you doing? Damian Keys here. Welcome to today's top 10, which is a top 10 tips on getting the most out of practicing your instrument. Something that I've been working with musicians for over 20 years, and time again, I'm seeing the same things which are preventing you from achieving the goals that you want to achieve on your instrument. So I just thought let's do a top 10. So come along with me on a journey for the top 10 ways to improve your practice. Number 10, plan your practice time. Now, before you even pick up your instrument, let's have a think what it is you are trying to achieve. I want you to plan it. Are we working on muscle memory? Are we working on learning songs? Are we learning on techniques? Are we learning scales? What is it that we want to achieve from this practice? Otherwise, what happens is you pick up your guitar, you put it on, you start noodling around, an hour goes past, 2 hours goes past, and you start feeling really good about yourself because you've been practicing for 2 hours, but realistically, you've done pretty much fuck all. So let's start planning what it is you want to get out of these practice routines. Number 9, plan your surroundings, plan your room. Now, a recent study shows that musicians only have 6 minutes worth of concentration span when practicing. And that isn't because of their brain, it's because they are constantly being interrupted by their phone or by Facebook or technology. Things are just getting in the way that are interrupting their practice, and that is stopping you from really achieving the things you want to do with your practice. So, set up your room. Just make sure it's quiet. Take the music off unless you're playing along with it. Make sure your phone is off. Make sure your computer's off. Make sure Facebook is not around. Take away all the obstructions that are in your way for a nice, peaceful time for you to practice. Number 8, speed kills. Now, have you got a metronome? Of course you've got a metronome, but if you don't have a metronome, just go and download a free one off the iPhone app and use it for every rehearsal. This is probably the number one issue that I see with musicians when they practice. They pick up their instrument and then they just start playing just a little bit too fast for their fingers. And what that does is it means that you're practicing, your muscle memory is practicing fumbling and just making the odd mistakes and timing discrepancies, and you don't want that. So what you want to do is you want to slow your practice down, but not just slow it down and build it up. I want you to practice at different speeds, different random speeds, so that you're playing slow, you're playing medium, you're playing fast, and that way it's not just muscle memory, it's also your fingers getting used to actually playing at certain speeds and certain feels. Tip 7, build your routine and then break your routine. Now, I want you to build a routine with your practice. I want you to have certain times a week that you're practicing. I want you to have certain things that you're constantly practicing. However, I also want it to be fresh, and I want you to get used to change, and I don't want you to be practicing the same things again and again and again. This is not just muscle memory. So what I want you to do is I want you to build a nice practice routine. I want you to do that for a couple of weeks, and then I want you to throw it away, and I want you to redesign a totally new one, because then you have to get used to all new styles, all new techniques, all new songs that you're going to be working on. So I want you to be constantly changing, because it's that change and your brain working on that change that will allow you to improve as a musician faster. Number 6, study your mistakes. Now, I'm constantly seeing musicians playing mistakes and just playing through the mistakes. Crazy thing to do, because your brain is getting used to you playing those mistakes. You are practicing mistakes. And I don't want you to just get to the mistake and stop and start again. What I want you to do is, if you make a mistake, I want you to stop and I want you to analyze what just happened with that mistake. I want you to look at performing the last bar and the next bar so that you can actually see what went wrong at a very slow pace. So you're literally studying the things that went wrong rather than studying the things that go right. It doesn't make sense, does it? If you're playing something right, why do you need to study that? You're already doing the good bit. If something goes wrong, you don't just stop and go, and start again and carry on going, get to the bit and go, and stop and start again and keep going, because all you're doing is you're telling your brain this is how the piece goes, and then you get to the mistake and you'll fuck it up again, and it will keep going and you will constantly be playing mistakes. So do not practice your mistakes and do not start again when you make a mistake. The key is actually stop, study that piece, that bit of the piece that you're playing, and study the mistake and find out what it is you do wrong. That is the most key bit to this entire video. Study those mistakes. Number 5, Practice without an instrument. Now, this is a weird thing to say, but practicing with or practicing without an instrument are both very, very good use of your time. And you'd be surprised how much you can do without an instrument, and how easy it is, how convenient it is, because you can practice while you're walking down the street, you can practice while you're on the bus or on the train, or even taking a poo. You can carry on practicing without your instrument, and studies have shown that people who practice with an instrument and people who practice without an instrument are still getting very, very similar levels of experience and training with what they do. And they've done it in sport and they've done it in music. So you don't need to have an instrument in your hand to practice. Think about scales, think about finger patterns, think about improvisation, think about practicing without your instrument, and I guarantee it will make a huge difference. Number 4, record yourself every single day. Obviously, I'm going to suggest that you practice every single day because we're musicians, that's what we want to do, we want to get better, but I want you to record yourself every single day. Have a practice log. So when I was a kid, I had a little practice log, and every time I was working on something, I would take notes. However, we live in a totally different time now. You can record yourself and you can use that as your practice log. You can set up a private YouTube account and make a video of your practice, and you can upload it to YouTube every single day so that you can look back month by month and see your improvement. But also, when it comes to recording yourself, like I always say, you should be studying what you're doing. Whether you're in a band, whether you're rehearsing, whether you're gigging, whether you're practicing, to be able to record yourself and watch it back and then visually see which bits are good and which bits need work, and then going back to the studying your mistakes. When something isn't good and you've seen it, you can go back and you can work on that bit. We are living in an amazing time where you can record yourself and study what you're doing for free. So utilize that. Number 3, minutes versus hours. You do not need to study for hours and hours a day. This old school tradition, this fallacy that you need to sit there and practice your instrument for 4, 5, 6 hours a day is complete bullshit. Because the amount of people who say they're practicing for 3 or 4 hours a day, they're not practicing. They might have a guitar in their hand, so they're working on some muscle memory, but that's not practice. Let's get this straight. Practice is different from playing. Those are two different things. Sitting and playing your instrument, it will mean you'll get a little bit better, but it's not practicing. So you don't need to practice for hours and hours every single day. It's what you practice. And going back to all of the other points of planning what it is you're going to do, setting targets, keeping a practice log, working on the right bits, studying your mistakes. If you're doing that, you don't actually need to practice for long periods of time. I would practice for 10 to 20 minutes and then do some playing and have some fun. But don't feel that you need to be doing that 10 times a day. A couple of times a day, 10 minutes here and there where you full on go into practice mode, that will really make a difference. Number 2, set targets. Set long-term targets, set short-term targets, whatever it is, whether it's pieces, whether it's improvisation, whatever that means something to you, but set these targets, because otherwise you go back into endless noodling, and that is something that 90% of musicians do. Endless noodling again and again and again, and then when I see them play, I'm like, I'm not really improving, and you're still making the same mistakes again and again. So whatever it is that you're working on, set targets, and then reward yourself. Once you've hit those targets, buy yourself a pie. And number 1, implement. And this is a big one, because why are we doing this? We're practicing because we want to get better. We want to be the best musicians that we can be. And we want to then take that and implement it into our gigs so that we can do it on the real world, on the real stage. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about what it is you're practicing and how that is going to fit into your next gig, into your next performance, into your next video, into your next bit of content. You're practicing for a reason, to get better, to implement it. So you have to put the two of them together. Figure out how you can take what you're doing in the practice room and how you can implement that into your real world situations. So thanks very much. That's the top 10 tips for you getting the most out of your practice routine. Smash that like, smash the subscribe, send some comments down below. There might even be a competition down below, who knows. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.